Hey everyone, my name is Austin, and I'm so glad that you decided to watch our River Valley Rogue River sermon. We are a church located in the beautiful city of Rogue River, and we would love to connect with any and all of you. One of the best ways you can do that is by joining our Facebook page. You can type in River Valley Rogue River, and you can join our page. Another way to do that is by sending direct emails. If you want to be in contact, if you need any prayer, make sure to reach out. We would love to get in contact with you. We hope that this sermon blesses you. Have a great rest of your day.
Morning, guys. How are we doing? We good? Yeah, Maddie, you're doing good? Yeah. Everybody said good, and then my wife went, good. So, that was great. Hey, can we hit the lights on? I want to see everybody just a little bit. And let there be light. Look at that. Now we're awake. Well, good morning, friends. I want to introduce myself. My name's Austin. I'm one of the Bible teachers here. And if this is your first time visiting here at River Valley, I want to welcome you. I'm glad you are with us today. Today we are going to be studying through John chapter 6. So what that means is we are back in the book of John, which is good news, right? Yes, I love it. So John chapter 6. If you don't have a Bible, or maybe, you haven't touched a Bible in a long time and you're like, I don't have one at my house. Hey, we have a stack of hardback black ones over there by the sound booth. You can go grab one and consider that our gift to you. I know that Christmas passed by, but Merry Christmas if you don't have a Bible. Today we're going to be talking about the very famous story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. This is a story that has been shared in Bible studies, churches, college seminaries, you name it, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And we find it in John chapter 6, verse 1. John 6, verse 1. So let's follow along. It'll be up on the screen as well. Here's what it says. After this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, and a huge crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was performing by healing the sick. Verse 1 starts out by saying, after this. Can we say that together? Ready? Here we go. After this. One more time. After this. After what, Austin? That's a great question. After what? Well, I want to fill the gap here. I want to fill the gap between the end of John 5 and the beginning of John 6. You see, at the beginning of this series, I pointed out how John, the writer of this gospel, was not trying to write a chronological account of the life of Jesus. In other words, John's objective was not to write a day-by-day diary of all of the movements and actions of the person of Jesus. That was not his intended goal. The intended goal of John was to write a book which pointed everybody to the undeniable fact that Jesus is God. That was John's purpose. That's what he was pointing people to. And so with that understanding, it means that there are going to be some gaps of time in the book of John to where we're going to go, well, what happened there? Well, you see, evidently between John chapter 5 and John chapter 6, there's a gap of time. And that gap of time is about 6 months. Now, during that 6 months, a lot happened, specifically in the ministry of Jesus. You see, the star and the fame of Jesus continued to rise during this 6 months. The stories of Jesus healing the sick would have spread. The story of Jesus turning water into wine would have been popping like wildfire all throughout the countryside. People would have heard, this guy Jesus, the guy who healed the paralyzed man at Bethesda, that guy's coming through our area. Jesus would have continued to grow in his fame and his popularity. But not only would Jesus' star continue to rise, the disciples' star would continue to rise as well. You see, in this 6-month period, Jesus sent his disciples out on a specific job, a missionary time spent away. The Gospel of Mark describes it this way. Mark chapter 6, verse 6. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village. Calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. Verse 12. They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them. In other words, the last 6 months of the life of Jesus and the disciples were incredibly busy. They would have been absolutely exhausting for this group of Jesus and the 12 disciples. In fact, Mark actually kind of allows us to peek into the travel journey and the kind of busyness that they would have experienced. It says this in Mark chapter 6, verse 31. For many people were coming and going, and they, the disciples, didn't even have time to eat. Wow. How many of you in here have ever been so busy you forget to eat? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah. I think that happens to a lot of us. I know for Maddie and I, sometimes at the end of a day, right, we'll be connecting. It'll be like 6, 7 o'clock or whatever, and we'll look at each other and be like, hey, what do we want for dinner? I don't know, but I know I'm hungry. Well, what did you eat? I like a granola bar and 2 shots of espresso at 8:15. And that's pretty much it. That's all we did. And we look at each other like, dude, we need to fuel our bodies a little bit better than this. I think all of us understand that idea of being so incredibly busy that we forget the simple priorities in life. But what I love so much about the context surrounding this story is that Jesus understands exhaustion. He gets it. Jesus understands exhaustion. Jesus would understand what it is like to be physically tapped out, exhausted, drained, pulled in every direction, physically exhausted. But not only would Jesus understand the feeling of physical exhaustion, you see something else very particular happened during this 6-month gap between John 5 and John 6. There was a death in the family. In Matthew 14, we learn that one of Jesus' good friends and his cousin, John the Baptist, was beheaded by a guy named King Herod. And so during this 6-month time period, Jesus was going village to village to village to village, preaching and teaching, expending tons of physical energy. But then he would have gotten notice that his friend and his cousin, his family member, John the Baptist, was beheaded. We get a peek into Jesus' emotional well-being in Matthew 14, verse 13. It says, when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place to be by himself. John the Baptist was his friend. He was a member of Jesus' family. And to lose a loved one in this way would have been absolutely heartbreaking. And so here in John 6, I need us to see here that Jesus and his disciples are exhausted. They are tired. Jesus was jet-lagged from his travels. The disciples were tired relationally, and Jesus would have been in a state of mourning emotionally. My point in sharing all of this with you today is quite simple. If you are someone who is currently in a season of life where exhaustion is your dominating feature of who you are, I want to let you know that Jesus understands where you're at. He understands where you're at. If you have that feeling of, if one more thing goes wrong, if I take a left instead of a right, I'm going to fall apart. Jesus understands you. He gets that. If you're someone whose lifestyle is marked by exhaustion, if you're constantly running on empty, if you feel like you're moments away from losing it, this lesson's for you. I'm glad you're here. Maybe some of you are like, Austin, I'm so tired, I barely even made it to church this morning. I'm glad you're here. Because today, what we're gonna see is that exhaustion can take us down one or the other different paths. You see, exhaustion can either lead us to annihilation or rejuvenation. That's what exhaustion can do. It can lead us to annihilation or rejuvenation. And so the goal today is that when we walk out of here, we have the necessary tools available in our tool belt to be able to be rejuvenated from the state of exhaustion instead of annihilated by it. Does that sound good? Yeah. I think this is good for us. Let's look at verse 3. Jesus went up a mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, a Jewish festival, was near. So when Jesus looked up, I like that. So when Jesus looked up and noticed a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip, where will we buy bread so that these people can eat? He asked this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. So here's the scene. Jesus and his disciples, they had boarded a boat. The boat took them from one end of the Sea of Galilee to the other end of the Sea of Galilee. They climb a hill, and we believe that this area that they were at was a region called the Golan Heights. It's known today over in Israel. Jesus has everybody sit down. They're catching their breath from climbing the Golan Heights. And before he knows it, Jesus lifts his head up from his exhaustion. And what do you know? There is a swarm of about 20,000 people traveling around the rim of the Sea of Galilee, coming closer and closer and closer and closer to where Jesus and his disciples are sitting, completely exhausted. Now, here's the thing. If I was one of the disciples at this time, I imagine my disposition and my demeanor would not be very good. I imagine I would lean over to probably Brother Peter and say, these people stink. What is wrong with them? Do they not understand personal space? Do they not understand that their presence is suffocating us? Do they not understand that the last 6 months we have spent going village to village to village to village, serving these people, casting out demons, helping them constantly, and we just want to get away for a brief moment with Jesus, but here they come, traveling like ants to trap us into the Golan Heights. Give us a break, Peter. And I imagine Peter would have been like, you're right, Austin, I'm right there with you. But look at what Jesus does. Jesus looks at Philip and he asks him a question. He says, where are we going to buy bread for all these people to eat? What a good question. What an interesting question. Why do you think Jesus asked that? I think one reason Jesus may have asked that question is because Jesus understands basic human psychology. Have you guys ever heard the term hangry? Anybody? Hangry? You're like, some of you are like, what? You're making up words now, Austin. What is hangry? Here's what hangry is. Hangry is what happens when a hungry person doesn't eat. They get hangry. They get hangry. They get in the red zone, the danger zone. It's not a good place. Jesus sees this group of about 20,000 people coming closer and closer and closer to him, and he realizes that eventually these folks are probably going to get a little bit hungry, and when people are hungry with nothing to eat, what happens? They get hangry. And so we need to do something about it. And so he looks at Philip, and he says, Philip, what are we going to do? And it says he was testing Philip. Now, why was Jesus picking on Philip? Why did Philip pull the short end of the stick here? Was Jesus being mean to him? Why did he pick Philip? Well, I think there's two potential reasons why Jesus chose Philip to speak to at this moment. One reason could be that Philip was a local of this area. You see, where they were located was this region called Bethsaida, and in John chapter 1, we learned that that is where Philip was from. So this was Philip's neck of the woods. He was in his hometown. He'd be like, yeah, Jesus, listen, the latest Costco is right over here. We got a Panera Bread. They got really good cooks back there. They're flying bread out constantly. I know a good catering service. We can get this taken care of. That could be one reason why Jesus asked Philip, where are we going to get bread for these people? But I think the second reason is probably much more likely. And I think the second reason, and probably the reason why Jesus asked Philip this question in particular, is because Jesus knew that Philip was most like you and most like me. I'll explain. What do we know about Philip? Well, Philip is someone in the Bible that we see constantly pursuing facts. He loved facts. He wanted facts. In John chapter 1, I'll give you some examples. In John chapter 1, remember, Philip runs up to Nathanael and he says, hey, if you really want to believe in this guy Jesus, you need to come and see him for yourself. If you want verifiable evidence that he is who he says he is, get up off your hiney, come with me, come see, touch, and see that guy Jesus, he's the real deal. In John 14, when the disciples were gathered in the upper room the night Jesus was betrayed, Philip, if you remember, he makes a very inappropriate statement to Jesus. It was very rude. He says, Jesus, show us the Father and it'll be enough for us. Are you kidding me, Philip? You've seen everything Jesus do, and you're like, yeah, it's just not enough. I want to see the Father, and it'll be enough for us. Philip liked the facts. He liked verifiable evidence. You see, for Philip, facts is what informed his faith. He loved facts. In other words, if he didn't see it, touch it, quantify it, verify it, his faith would falter. I don't know about you, but when I look at this character study of Philip, don't you think that Philip would be a prime candidate for living in 2022? I mean, it seems like every article we read now, what does it have? Fact check. We have fact checkers left and right. In our culture, we seem to love this idea of verifiable evidence. We want the truth. We don't want any fluff. We want facts. That's what we like. I think Philip would have fit in well with us in 2022. And look how Philip responds to Jesus. It's totally in character. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread wouldn't be enough for each of them to have even a little bit. I love this response because Philip is just like me. I think he's just like a lot of us here. Jesus says, Philip, where are we going to get bread to feed these people? And Philip doesn't answer the question. Philip says, listen, Jesus, it wouldn't matter if there was a Costco, an express Costco, a massive Costco with Panera and everything located right below the Golan Heights. It doesn't matter because I looked at our money changer. That was Judas, a little bit sketchy. I think he's skimming some off the top. And I'm telling you right now, we don't even have enough money to buy this supposed bread. He doesn't even answer the question. Jesus says, where are we going to buy the bread? Philip says, don't even worry about it. It's impossible. We don't have the money to buy this fake supposed bread, Jesus. But then he continues. We meet another character. One of his disciples, Andrew, said to him, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Pretty good, right? But then he says this, like a moron, but what are they for so many? Man. You see, Andrew from the outside looking in, he kind of looked like he had his stuff together a little bit, right? He kind of looked like his response was a little bit better than Philip's. He says, hey, while you guys are up here chit-chatting, I was actually down amongst the 20,000 and I found a sack lunch. I found a Lunchable. And this little boy had 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Pretty cool, right? But then he adds on something that is just ridiculous. He almost had it, but he said, but what are they for so many? There's 20,000 people here. 20,000 people is about how many people could fit in the Moda Center where the Portland Trail Blazers play, okay? So Andrew's looking at 5 barley loaves, 5 muffins, 2 sardines, and is like, it's something, but we're not gonna feed the Moda Center. There's not enough here to feed the Moda Center. It's just not gonna happen. It's not looking good for us. But let's see how the story ends because it's pretty cool. Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000. Now keep in mind, there would have been women and children, so the number conservatively would have been anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000. Liberal estimates as much as 35,000. A lot of people. Then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, we're going to talk about that because that's really cool, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also with the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were full, he told his disciples, collect the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. So they collected them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces from the 5 barley loaves that were left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, this truly is the prophet who has come into the world. What a beautiful story. I imagine at the very end, Philip and Andrew probably were looking at each other and went, holy cow, that was pretty cool. So earlier I said exhaustion can either lead us to annihilation or rejuvenation. I want to show you 3 ways that exhaustion can annihilate us. Number 1, exhaustion can cloud our understanding of God's power. Can cloud our understanding of God's power. One of the most remarkable things to me about this story here is the apostles' response to Jesus. It doesn't make any sense to me why they respond to Jesus this way when the physical person, Jesus, is standing right in front of him. They saw Jesus turn water to wine, turn ordinary water into 180 gallons full of the best drinking Napa Valley wine you could ever taste. They saw Jesus heal the nobleman's son from a distance. Remember that? Jesus just spoke, and at that very moment, the nobleman's son was healed many cities away. They saw Jesus heal the lame man at Bethesda. They were standing in front of Jesus, this miracle-working, wisdom-speaking man who did things that only God could do. Yet here they are in the midst of an impossible situation and circumstance, and they look at Jesus and they say, this is above your pay grade. No way this is going to work. We're in an impossible situation. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound relatable to our lives at all? I know for me in my life, I found oftentimes that in moments of exhaustion, I tend to push aside the power of God in my life. When I'm super tired, when I'm super worn out, I tend to look at God's power, God's past examples of power, and go, I don't know. I don't know if there's actually anything there. In other words, for a lot of us, when the going gets hard, we tend to focus on the impossible instead of remembering that we serve a God of proven power who always flips impossible upside down and does something impossible. We serve that kind of God. When we're exhausted, when we're worn out, when we're tapped out, sometimes we devalue and push aside God's power and say, no. This mountain's too high. This river's too wide. This canyon's too deep. God can't do anything now. Exhaustion can cloud our understanding of God's power. Number 2, exhaustion can also underestimate what we have left. Exhaustion can underestimate what we have left. We see this with Andrew very clearly. Look at what he says. There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? Translation of that. Jesus, 20,000 people. We have 5 barley loaves, 5 little muffins. We have 2 sardines. Not going to be enough for this entire crowd. Sure, this is what we have and this is what we're going to offer you, but it's not going to work. It's not going to be enough. There's no way 5 barley loaves and 2 sardines are actually going to feed 20,000 people. It's not enough. Listen to me closely, friends. I think this is really important. One of the most powerful and potent lies that Christians believe is that in the moment of fatigue and exhaustion, they have nothing to offer God that he could use greatly. Did you hear that? In moments of great fatigue, in moments of great exhaustion, what we tend to think of ourselves is, at this moment, I have nothing left to give that God could use. I have nothing. God can't work through me right now. I'm exhausted. I only have 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. I can't feed 20,000 people. There's no way you're going to feed 20,000 people with this. And so what we do is we devalue and push aside what little we do have. But here's the thing. I love this about this story. It's not about the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, right? Like this story, sure, there's 5 loaves and there's 2 fish, but that's not the point of the story. You see, the point of the story is who the bread and who the fish is being given to. The bread and the fish are going to Jesus. It's not what the little boy had to offer, it's who he was offering it to that made the difference. It was Jesus. You see, friends, when Jesus is at the center of an exhausted and drained circumstance, nothing is too small and no obstacle is too high for God to move powerfully. He can move powerfully. When we're exhausted, I know how it feels. We can experience this sense of being paralyzed, this sense of inadequacy, the feeling of God could do nothing right now because I have nothing left to give. Well, friends, listen to me. If God can supernaturally feed 20,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish, you better believe that he can use a worn out, exhausted person like you. He can. He can use you right where you're at. That's number 2. Exhaustion can underestimate what we have left. Number 3, exhaustion can wear down our faith. Exhaustion can wear down our faith. I found in my life that in the moments of great sense of being overwhelmed and worn out, my faith and my trust in God sometimes begins to falter a little bit. I remember when I was about 20 to 21, I went through this season where I was not necessarily super satisfied with the way I was. And so for me, I wanted to kind of audit a little bit about my life. And so what I would do is I would start writing down moments where I started getting a little bit angry, when my temper would rise, when I would say foolish things to loved ones, when I would sense that feeling of annoyance start to rise, when my blood pressure would begin to rise, when I would start getting really frustrated. And what I did for about a year and a half, is on my phone, I would track all of those moments. It's a little weird, I know, but I would track them and see, why am I this way? I don't like this character trait in me and it's turning into this. Why am I more apt to give in to temptation here versus here. And here's what I found over about a year and a half of auditing myself. I found that Austin was not a very good version of Austin after 9 p.m. That's what I found. Super scientific. I found that my temper was a little bit hotter. I found that my level of annoyance was a little bit more on shaky ground. I felt that I could be set off a little bit more after 9 p.m. In other words, what I found for me is that my physical weakness impacted my spiritual fortitude. It impacted my spiritual strength. And I don't think that's uncommon. I don't think that's uncommon for a lot of us. I mean, just imagine this. You had a really rough day. You woke up, you thought you set your alarm for 6:50, but then you're up at 7:10 and you have to be out the door at 7:20. And you're like, whoa, the house is an absolute mess. The check engine light on your car went off on your way to work. You get to work, your boss is having a cranky day, makes you frustrated. You get home, the kids are screaming, the washing machine is leaking, the pipes under the sink are leaking, nothing's good, everything's falling apart. And then in that moment, you tell me, are you pretty likely to snap and say something that you're going to regret to your loved one? Probably. Versus, if you woke up a little bit early that day, you spent 45 minutes with God in the tub, just soaking with Epsom salt. Life is good, man. It was great. You ate a cinnamon roll right after. You did a little P90X workout. Everybody's driving great. Nobody cuts you off. Kids are smiling and saying, "You're the best parent I've ever known." Everything is good. And then you get home and your bed's nice and warm and everybody's happy. And it's your birthday, I guess, in this world. And you have a cake. I don't know about you, but I feel in that environment, you're probably less likely to snap and say something to a loved one that you're going to regret. My point is that physical exhaustion can wear down our faith a bit, you know? It can wear down our faith. It really can. And here's the thing, friends. There's so many things from this story that I think we could talk about, so many application points that we could apply to our lives. But for our time today, I just want us to see that exhaustion can lead us to annihilation. It can lead us to annihilation. But I also need us to see the flip side of the coin here, and that is how to handle exhaustion, which leads us to rejuvenation. Because we need to be rejuvenated, friends. And so what can we learn from this story about rejuvenation? 3 points. Here's the first way that exhaustion can lead us to rejuvenation. Number 1, exhaustion should remind us to rest. It should remind us to rest. One thing I so love about this story is that it starts in verse 1 with Jesus getting away. And then in verse 15, it ends with Jesus getting away. Now, I understand that the culture we are living in is a culture of warp speed. I understand that we are living in a caffeinated, jacked up, creatine-induced frenzy of a culture. Just constantly going, addicted to hurry. I get that. Which is why it's so important for us to detach, take a step back, and really rest. And really rest. I will say, of all the practices and habits that I have in my own life, there is not another habit that is more important than Monday. You say, what do you mean by Monday, Austin? Here's what I mean by Monday. On Monday, that is the day of the week. My phone goes on Do Not Disturb. I do not look at my email. I do not respond to phone calls or texts. And I completely detach and unplug 100% and spend time with Jesus. And let me tell you, and I mean this, Monday, I genuinely believe, has added years and years and years onto my life in ministry. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. This last Monday was so special for me. I woke up, I played with the puppy a while, I read my Bible, I read a good book, I listened to 4 different J.D. Greear sermons, which I just loved. I drove around town, did some things that just brought me really a lot of joy, some things that I had to get off my list. I found myself just kind of in a mute zone with the sound in my car kind of turned off, just kind of praying out loud, just talking to Jesus. The birds were chirping, the sky was blue. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful Monday. And on Tuesday, I was ready to go. I was ready to go. I was ready to hit it. I just experienced this beautiful rest. Now, I know for some of you, you're thinking, Austin, I don't have an entire day where I can turn my phone on Do Not Disturb and get away. That's not my reality. I understand that. I understand that for some of us, our lives have different rhythms and cadences, and that it's very difficult to portion out X amount of time to do X amount of things. But listen to me, as your pastor, as your friend, as someone who prays for you, I want to gently implore you and beg you to find time and margin in your life to get away and rest with Jesus. To just be in his presence. To just spend time with him. I'm telling you, it will change your life. I mean that. And what I love so much about this is that all throughout the gospel accounts, we see Jesus retreating, getting away, praying, spending time with the Father, just praying, being separate from the world, getting out of the busyness, disciplining himself to unhurry. It's this beautiful, beautiful rhythm. And I want to encourage us to be like Jesus. Find moments that you can escape exhaustion and busyness and experience genuine rest. If you're looking for a good book or a good resource on how to do this, I could spend 27 hours, I feel, teaching on this because it's so huge for me. There's a beautiful book written by a guy named Mark Buchanan, and it's called The Rest of God. I'm pretty sure it's the only book he's ever written, but it is a magnificent book, and it's this concept of true, genuine rest. You see, there's a difference between taking a day off and watching Netflix all day and taking a day off and being with Jesus. It's a huge difference, and there's a way in which to do that. So number one, exhaustion should remind us to rest. Number two, exhaustion should remind us of what we have to be thankful for. Exhaustion should remind us of what we have to be thankful for. Look at verse 11. Then Jesus took the loaves and after giving thanks. Can we say that together? Can we say after giving thanks together? Ready? After giving thanks. One more time just for kicks and giggles. Ready? After giving thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. I love what Jesus does here. It says he took the loaves from the boy, he gave thanks, and then he began to distribute it. In other words, Jesus gave thanks before the miracle happened. Do you notice that? You see, for a lot of us, when we eat food at dinner time, we sit down with the family, sit down with friends, what do? We've prepared all the food is ready to go, it's on the plate, it's hot and it's ready. Mom, dad grabs us, say, hurry up, we need to pray because the food's hot, so let's go. And then you pray, you bless the food, and then you begin to eat it. You see, what Jesus does here is Jesus sets a table, all the plates are empty, and he says, thank you, God. And then the miracle happened. It's a beautiful concept. It's a beautiful, beautiful little nugget here in this story. Jesus gave thanks before the food was even provided. What a beautiful principle for us, friends. When we are exhausted, when we are drained, when we are in a bleak situation, that is when it is most important to practice this discipline of thankfulness. That is when it is most important to say, thank you. You might say, Austin, it's hard to be thankful when life is tough. But friends, you tell me, is there anything more beautiful than someone who is in the depths of despair, but who is desperately clinging to the mercy and grace of God, thankfully? That's a beautiful testimony. That's a beautiful testimony. It's hard to be thankful. Maybe some of you are wondering, what would this look like practically for me in my life? That's a great question. I want to give you an example from this last week in my life. This last week for the Abbotts was a roller coaster, to say the least, right, babe? I call my wife babe. Sorry, guys. It's just what we do. This month of January has been absolutely wild. So I wrote down a list of some of the things that everything's breaking. Like everything's literally breaking in our lives. So here's what: our toilet broke, the pipes under the sink broke, our heating unit broke, a water pipe under our house broke last weekend during church, which was just comedy. My car's randomly been shutting off, so if you see a 2001 Honda CR-V dead in the middle of traffic in Rogue River, that's me. It's happened to me like 4 times now. I'm not kidding. Actually, I drove up on Paula and Nancy one time. They were walking around, and I was, Paula, Nancy, and I freaked out because I thought my car was going to die. So I'm like, got to keep going. On top of that, On top of that, I'm like, hey, it's dirt bike riding season. Pull my dirt bike out. Let's take it up in the mountains. It's running great. Everything's going good. Mark and I are as far away as you could possibly get from the trailer. And what do you know? My bike dies. And I'm like, sweet, this is great. On top of that, I'm in an accounting class right now, which 2 thumbs down for accounting. Accounting is Any accountants in here? Any accountants in here? Praise the Lord. Absolutely brutal. Accounting is so hard. I'm in another class, a business communications class, and my professor is just jamming down these like wicked ideological beliefs that are just nonsense. And every time I read a post, I go like, ugh, oh gosh. And I just get so sick and tired of it. And there's a few other things in my life I'm just getting amped up by. And so it was funny. As I'm writing this sermon, I'm going, God, what the heck? Like, why is this for me so much? And about halfway through this week, I realized that I was getting amped up. I was getting annoyed. And I read verse 11. And I saw what Jesus did after giving thanks. And God really spoke to me, friends. In fact, he reminded me of a story in Matthew chapter 7. And the story is about a wise man who builds his house on the rock, on the hard ground. And how a foolish man, what does he do? He builds a house on this sinking, shifting sand. And I was reminded as I was studying this week that, man, right now everything is breaking. My car's dying. Nothing is working. But my life is built on the solid rock. My life is built on Jesus. And it doesn't matter how many water, waves, wind crash up against me in this life. I know that regardless and through it all, you will remain steadfast and firm because my foundation is in you. And in those moments, I may not feel like I have anything to be thankful for, but I can be thankful that my foundation is firmly placed and understanding that it's in God and God alone. And that's all I need. That's all I need. Now, I know that my example may seem kind of trivial, and I know it may seem kind of like child's play compared to a lot of your stories. But here's the thing. God comforts people who are in the depths of despair. When we cast our burdens on him, he helps us. My point in sharing all of this with you is that when the waves of life are crashing into you, you have to fight for thankfulness. And I mean that. It's a fight. This is not something you just wake up and go, I'm thankful. No, this is a fight. I may not feel like I have anything to be thankful for. You got to fight for your thankfulness, friends. We got a lot to be thankful for. So that's number 2. Exhaustion should remind us of what we have to be thankful for. And number 3, exhaustion should remind us that God is generous to those who seek him. One aspect of this story that I love is that it was a child who brought the 5 barley loaves and the fish to Jesus. It was a child. It wasn't a king. It wasn't a knight. It was a child. A child, somebody who is on the lowest rung of the social ladder. Somebody that society would kind of just push away. Not a big deal, it's just a kid. But not only that, the ingredients for the miracle also was barley loaves. Now, if you're not familiar with what barley loaves are, barley loaves was the wonder bread of the ancient world. This was the dollar a loaf kind of bread. This was normally the bread that was reserved for anyone but rich people. You see, wealthy people in society, they didn't dabble with barley bread. They would eat wheat bread. It tasted better. It would more fluffy. It would taste more tasty. Not barley bread. So here in this story, I so love that Jesus uses a kid, lowest rung on the social ladder, and he uses barley bread to do something miraculous. Not only that, it says in the story that the people ate, quote, as much as they wanted. And when they were full, nice and full, he told his disciples, collect the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. That's so cool. Not only does Jesus use the least of these in society to do something special, he also gives everyone as much as they wanted, and none of it was wasted. Friends, if you walk away today with one thing, I want it to be this. I want you to know that no matter how tired and beat up you feel, our God, Jesus, he can take your exhaustion and he can do something beautiful with it. But the answer is it has to go to Jesus. It has to be placed in him. He has to be the focus. And what we're going to find here is that when Jesus is at the center of our exhaustion, we're going to realize and understand the beauty of rejuvenation instead of annihilation. And I want us to be rejuvenated. I want us to experience that gospel rest that Jesus had when he would get away to spend time with the Father. We can experience that today as well. Let's not be annihilated. Let's be rejuvenated. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for our time today, and we thank you for the gospel, and we thank you for everything about this story. Father, I pray that in this very busy, crazy, and hectic world, that we would find time and create margin to spend it with you. Father, I pray that for people in this room today who may feel this sense of being overwhelmed by this crazy life of ours, Father, I pray that this moment here, Lord, February 6th, 2022, would be a time where we could detach and just go, wow, God, you really are the main point. I need you, and I need you desperately. Thank you, Lord, that you hear us, and thank you, Lord, that you understand us when we are in the midst of that busy, exhausted state of mind. You are so good to us. We love you, Father, and we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.